Hello everyone and welcome to this another episode of 3D prototyping in Unity. My name is Kasanis. In the last episode we took care of a special effect of a fireball, and we allowed us to create a new projectile for a weapon. And later on in a future episode we are going to take a look at making a simple inventory system where we can switch weapons between a fireball kind of cannon and a machine gun. And you know what, you'll be able to do it between any weapons at all. But anyway, in today's episode, guys, I'd like to start taking a look at the idea of GUI. Right now, we have no real indicators when our player's injured. We have no real indicators at all about the player at all. And the GUI is a very, very important part of any game. It gives the player the information they need to be able to make decisions and to play your game properly. Alright, guys, so in today's episode, it's GUI. Let's get started. So, GUI in Unity is actually pretty simple. It's actually very, very simple, and it's been very, very simple since version 5. That's when they really improved the GUI system. The entire GUI is based on the concept of the canvas. So let's actually add one of those right now. We're going to say create, and we're going to say UI. We're going to go to UI, and we're going to find canvas, and we're going to add a canvas in place. Now, you can't really see the canvas right here. If you want to be able to see the canvas properly, up here there's a little tiny switch for 2D. Switch into 2D, and with canvas selected down here, hit focus with your, or hit F, excuse me, with your mouse hovering over the panel space. And that's going to give you a full view of the canvas itself. And it's massive. It looks really, really giant. We can't even see our little dude anymore. And the reason why is because the canvas design is done one-to-one, one pixel to one pixel as far as the display is concerned. And that gives you the maximum amount of space in order to design your really nice GUI. Like I said, the GUI is extremely important. It gives people the information that they need to be able to make decisions about the game and what they're going to do in the game. The GUI we're going to build here is going to be pretty simplistic. In the first episode, we'll take a look at creating a simple GUI that's going to display the weapon the character is carrying and the character's health. In a later episode, we'll look at advancing this GUI. We'll look at creating a damage indicator. So besides having a health slider, we'll actually have a damage indicator. Every time the character's damaged, the screen will flash. And we'll also look at creating a weapon system as far as like amount of ammo and that kind of stuff. So we're going to actually take a look at ammo in a later date as well. So there's a lot of stuff you can put into the GUI. We're going very, very simplistic, but once I show you how to do this stuff, you can make your GUIs as fancy as you want to. Anyway, let's start off right away by changing the name of our canvas, and let's call this the player canvas. It doesn't really matter what you call it, just make sure you can identify it. Later on, we're going to actually create other canvases for our enemies and that kind of thing. Alright, so the first thing I want to do, I'm not going to really change anything within the canvas itself. I want it to be in screen overlay, and we're going to discuss other types of render modes later on. But screen overlay means overlay it across your entire scene. And basically, as your scene size changes, like right now we are in free aspect, but if we actually have a particular size, you can see that up there my actual GUI itself is changing as well. So the GUI will change along with the screen. Alright? So take that into account when you're actually designing everything. The first thing we're going to add is something called a GUI canvas. I'm going to add a component right here. Add component. I've already typed it. If you can't find it, all you have to do is type CAN, and you'll come up with all the different canvas options. And I'm going to add a canvas group. The canvas groups allows us to do a number of different things. Now, depending on what kind of GUI you're creating, you might want everything on your GUI to be interactable. I am putting in a slider that's going to demonstrate the character's health, and obviously I don't want the people to be able to simply slide their health back up to normal. So I'm going to turn off this interactable. I'm also going to turn off blocks raycasts, and you can leave it on or off. It doesn't really matter in this situation. Leaving it on or leaving it off doesn't really matter. I'm going to turn it off just because in a future game I'm actually have to remember to turn it off, and I'm just doing it so I remember right now. Blocks raycast basically means that you are going to be able to click on the GUI, and it's going to actually, whenever you click somewhere in the GUI or you hover, you can actually cause a raycast to go from your mouse to screen space, and if you block that, then you can't actually click around. So let's say you were doing something like a point-and-click game, or a game where your mouse was used to rotate around and you aimed it, that kind of thing. You would not want it to block your raycast because you might use a raycast to determine exactly where your mouse is touching on the screen. Alright, so you might not want that in the case of blocks raycast. You might want to turn that off. Anyway, that's all we're going to do to that right now. This canvas group is basically an envelope inside of an envelope, and that's fine. What we do want to do, we're going to want to add a couple of things here. And we'll start off really, really simple. Let's start off by adding an image. All right. Actually, you know what? Let's start off by adding a child. I'm going to say create, and I'm going to say create empty child. Now, when we do so, whenever we did this before, we ended up with a transform, and in this case here, when we created our game child underneath the actual canvas, we ended up with this slightly different system. Now we have a rect transform instead of a regular transform node, and the rect transform works very, very similar to a regular transform node, allowing you to change its position, its size, and that kind of things. We've additionally got these different anchors. Now the anchors themselves, if you look on the screen, let me zoom in. If we look at the screen itself, we've got these kind of little, this little cross type thing, this little X type thing, and these are actually arrows that are all pointing into a very particular point right now. And those are the anchors, and the anchors tell you a lot about this actual object. Let's change the name of it right away. This is going to hold all of our player info, so let's just call it player info group. Doesn't matter what you call it. I'm going to basically put everything about the player on this group, and then I'm going to be able to adjust where this group is, and it's going to kind of be like a global envelope holding all of my player information together. Anyway, discussing the anchors themselves. The anchors themselves will tell you where this thing is in space. So right now it is anchored to the global object in halfway point. So at 0.5 in the x, 0.5 in the y, and 0.5 in the x and 0.5 in the y. Everything is right in the middle of our global object. If I adjust my sizing again, like, that's a bad example. If I adjust our sizing again, you can see how it actually moves around with the actual object. All right, so it's moving all around with the actual object, and that keeps whatever GUI you've built into the location that you wanted to build it. Okay, by changing the anchors, let's say I instead wanted the anchors to be somewhere down here in the corner. Watch what happens. I've got a number of different options here. I can go through and I can adjust where this object is anchored if I want to by adjusting the min, max, and the pivot. If I didn't want to do that, instead what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to use one of the defaults. This little icon right here is actually a button. It's not really an icon. If you click on it and hold it, it's going to show you the different anchor presets you've got. And you've got the ones that are currently here. So right now we're using the center one. So you just got to click it, don't have to hold it. But if we want to set up the anchors instead, so they were, let's say, on the left-hand side, well, we can simply click here. Now you can see that the anchors themselves have all moved. It hasn't actually, let's go back and take a look. It is adjusted the min and the max. It hasn't adjusted the y's. It's adjusted the x to the min and max, not the y's at all, because the y's stayed level, but the x is moved. And it didn't adjust the pivot point. So right now we're still pivoting around the center of the object. And that's, again, not what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're pivoting this object. See, if I, again, change my aspect ratio to 5:4, all right, it's now, you can see what it's doing right there. It's actually staying within the actual center of the object. It's just moving a little bit with the object itself. And I don't want that. I actually want this entire group to be located down here in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to click this again. I've got two other options with this selected. I can use Shift, and Shift shows me where I'm changing my pivot to. So right now, my pivot point is in the center. If I wanted to change my pivot point to, let's say, the side as well, but I can choose one of these. Let's say, bam, up into the corner. So I'm now pivoting around the corner itself. If I wanted to also change the position of my object, I can hold Shift, and I can also hold Alt. This is on PC. And by doing so, when I click, let's say, the lower left-hand corner down here, boom, I've actually physically moved my object, and I have physically moved my pivot point as well. Now, when I change the aspect ratio, let's say to 5:4, you can see the object itself is staying stationary. It's not going to move from that position. It is locked into the left-hand corner. So regardless of how I actually change my screen size, whatever the aspect ratio of my screen size is, the GUI itself is going to maintain that relative position. All right, let's add ourselves a few components of a visual nature. You can't actually see this on the screen right now, of a visual nature to this object. Now, once again, what I can do is I can add an object exactly the same way that I did add the player group here. I'm going to click on the canvas. Actually, I'm going to click on the player group because I want everything to go within the player group itself. So I'm going to click on this player info group, and I'm going to say create. And I'm going to have a number of options within UI. What I want to change right now, I want to make an image that's going to show the player's weapon. All right, so I'm simply going to choose image. Bam, and the image itself has now been offset. Now you can see it's got an offset position a little bit, and it's still in the center, and that's not exactly where we want it. We want this image to be, well, I want it to be first of all in there, which it wasn't. It should have been. I want it to go in the player info group. Now as soon as I did that, you can see there's automatically an offset in the position on the X and the Y. I'm offset 131 in the X and 86 in the Y from this position right here, from the pivot point of this object. All right, and I'm pivoting from the center from 0.5.5 of this parent object. I don't want that to happen. What I actually want to occur is I want this image to be linked into this object somehow. So first I'm going to go in here, I'm going to right click, and once again I'm going to choose with my shift and my alt a location where I want to go off. And I'm going to choose on the left hand side first of all. Now this is a really big image. It's too big for me right now. You can see that we've got the image showing up down here in the game view. Let's actually make the game view a little bigger here so we can kind of see it a little better. All right, that's our game. Let's reduce this because we don't need this right now. That's our game view. So we can see we're getting an image in the corner right there, and it's directly in the corner. Now, first of all, I don't love that. I don't want it to be directly in the corner. I want to offset it a little tiny bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little tiny bit of an X and a Y position. And I'm going to resize it as well because the width and height are not exactly what I want. So let's say for now I make this 50 by 50. All right. And let's say that's more of the size I like. I'm not even sure yet. I'm going to have to go through and kind of see what my normal size is going to be for my game, and then afterwards decide. That looks a little bit small. Let's actually make it 75. 75 by 75. Just for now. Just for now. And you can see how it's actually changing down here. And that's fine. That's great for now. I'm going to make it 75 by 75. And in fact, I think what I'm going to do as well, and I'm going to make this actual image group, my player info group, a little bit bigger. I want to hold the information like I want to hold a slider and I want to hold this image. So let's for now make this thing, let's give it a width of, let's say 300. All right, and it doesn't really matter what size you make it. This is just a placeholder, but I'm using it as a frame to kind of figure out where everything is. That's the only reason. You don't ever have to make this thing bigger or smaller. It's not anything you'll ever see inside of this actual frame. All you're going to see in the actual game window is the images you create. Now, let's go back to the image, and let's change the name right away to, let's call it, I don't know, player weapon image. All right, and that tells us exactly what it is. It's good to give your things appropriate names. I know I'm terrible at names, guys. I know. Give it an appropriate name so that you've kind of got it the way you'll be able to identify where it is a little bit later on. If you don't do that and you're trying to look for something later on, you haven't named anything properly, and you'll spend a lot of time looking for it. And you don't want to do that, right? You want to make sure that you're actually getting it going. All right, so let's first of all change this image up. With the image selected, I'm going to go in and I'm going to change what I'm seeing. Right now, down here in my image, it has source image none. And I obviously want something there, right? It is not a Raycast target. I can turn that off. And I'm going to change this, bam, to our scene. Where did I put it? Where's my stuff? Oh, I didn't make sprites yet. I have not made sprites yet. Now, that's something that's very important. Something to consider, and I forgot, actually. If we take a look at our textures, whenever we're working in 3D, all the things that come in are going to be actual textures instead. You see this type texture? And what we really want these things to be is sprites. If we're going to be using it for GUI, they have to be sprites. So make sure you go in. I'm going to use this image right here. I'm going to change my assault rifle from a texture to a sprite for the UI itself. I'm going to save it off, apply. All right, and now I'll be able to use it in my player image, my player weapon image. So I'm going to go down here again, find my sprite, bam, bam, and there it is. And I'm going to use this thing here to kind of indicate what weapon they're carrying. Later on, when we actually adjust how many weapons they've got, I'm going to change this image out to make it look like, you know, whatever, a rocket launcher or a flamethrower or whatever. And I'll do all that through code later on. But for now, our character has an assault rifle, and that's all I want to use. All right, and I'm not going to do anything else with this image. It's not any kind of button. It's not any kind of indicator right now. Later on, we can consider adding animation to it, that kind of stuff. But for now, I'm actually going to leave it just as it is. All right, it's just simply an indicator of what the character is carrying around. What I'd like to add next is a slider. I'm going to have to make a few adjustments down here. Ultimately, I'm going to use this heart as the character's heart that they're using, you know, to indicate their health. So I'm going to change this from a texture to a sprite. I'll just do that right now so we don't run into that problem a little later on. All right, and what I want to do now is under this player info group, I'm going to once again say create, and I'm going to create a UI object, and I'm going to create this time a slider. All right, and the slider, once again, popped in the wrong spot. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it, I'm going to drop it on my player info group so it's all together. All right, that's what I'm going to do first of all. Now, within the slider itself, there are a number of different options that we can take a look at. First of all, it's in completely the wrong spot. I don't like that, so let's go immediately and adjust where it's located. Once again, I'm going to shift and alt, and I'm going to move it over to here like that. And I'm obviously going to need an offset because I don't want it sitting directly on top of this object. So I'm going to offset it a little tiny bit in the X. And I'm just going to drag this, get over there. I'm just going to give it a number. Let's say 50. This is just a guess. Obviously not 100. That's not so bad. Let's try 75. No, that's not enough. Let's try 90. All right, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. Now, the slider itself I want to use as the character's health. That's what I want to use it for. First of all, once again, it is not going to be interactable. Bam, I'm going to turn it off. And I'm also going to turn off my color tint to none. Later on, you're going to see what that does. That's actually going to make this little handle here, either if you leave it as a color tint, it's going to have a slightly translucent look to it. And you don't want that. Transparent look to it. You don't want that. You want it to be a solid object. All right, and that's all I'm going to really change for now. I'm going to leave the rest of this stuff in here. Oh, ultimately, I'm going to change these min and max values to something. Right now, there's 0 and 1, and you can see I can adjust this, and I can set up to be either whole numbers or not whole numbers. If you're going, depending on how your damage system is going to work, you might want to set up to be whole numbers so everything's moving properly. But if not, we haven't really discussed damage that well yet. We haven't actually done a whole lot of damage to our character yet. Ultimately, it's going to be whole numbers. And ultimately, through code, we are going to set the minimum and the maximum value through code to be the character's minimum and maximum health values. Okay? Now, and you can also say whether or not the direction's left to right, up and down, etc., etc., etc. There's a lot of different options within here. All right. Now, and we're not going to add any of this kind of stuff here. This here is all values unchanged. It's going to do something. We don't want to do that. All we're using our slider for currently is a visual representation of our actual health. Okay, now let's go through and adjust some of these slider options. I'm going to take a look. First of all, we've got a number of different things. We have the background, we have the fill area, and we have the handle and the handle slide area. So we have a number of different things, and some of this stuff we're not going to actually need at all. I've oftentimes removed some of this stuff, and said I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it a little bit differently than I did in the 2D version. So if you followed the 2D version, this one's going to be slightly different. First thing I want to change is the handle itself. The handle is this little tiny circle right here, and in our case, I want to use some kind of visual representation of what this thing is for. In our case, it's going to be health, right? So instead of using a knob, I'm going to use the heart. So I'm just going to click it, and I'm going to find heart in here, and that looks good, all right? And it's already opaque. As I mentioned before, if I hadn't changed this value here, watch what happens if I have a color tint. The heart itself is a little bit transparent. I don't want that. I want a nice solid image like that. Okay, great. That's the first thing we have to change. Now, the next thing I want to change is the color of the background and that kind of thing. Right now it's white, and the colors you choose ultimately are going to really determine a lot of things about what the people are looking at. You really want to decide on a color scheme that's intuitive. Obviously, I don't want to use maximum health as red because we often associate red with danger, and we want to show really I want to show my bar here as green. So we've got a couple of options. Let's go into the fill area itself and expand that, boop, and take a look at the fill. Bam. Now the fill is what's on top, and currently it's got an image on it, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to leave the image on there for now. We're just going to use the default one. You guys can go through and change these images, and that will give your sliders a different look. I'm not going to do that for now. I'm just going to leave the sliders just as they are. And you know what? What I'm going to do first, before I do this, I'm going to change the name from slider. Because once again, forgot to change the name. Let's call this one here player health. Oh my god, I can't spell today. Slider. And just once again, it's so I know what it is later on. Player health slider. Let's go to the fill. Sorry, the fill. Right now, the fill's got this image, and that is fine. We're going to leave it like that. I don't want the color, though. I don't want the color white. I want to change it to some other color that I think is going to be easily identifiable to the player as maximum health. And in our case, I'm going to go with the green. Really and truly, the color that you choose is going to be completely up to you. And I'll just go with this green right here. Boom. Go all the way like that. Pure green. So that pure green color is showing my entire slider now as pure green. This to me is going to say to the player, look, you've got your maximum health. All right, this is your maximum health. Green we often associate with good things. All right, so I'm going to leave it as green. Now that said, I'm going to change the background. Bam, the background itself. Currently the color is once again white. So watch, if I actually adjust this, let's go back to our slider for a minute. Let's go back to the main group. Sorry, player health slider. And I'm going to adjust this value a little bit. Watch what happens when I adjust the value. It slowly, come on, value it. Oh, I have whole number set. Let me turn it off for a second. As I slowly adjust this, you can see that it's kind of making a white background show. And in some cases, if you wanted to, in the 2Ds, for example, in the 2D episodes, for example, I deleted the background entirely, and I just used a shrinking health bar to show the actual health of the character. And I don't want to do that in this case here. What I want to do instead is I'm going to leave the background, and I'm going to change it to red. And the red then will slowly be exposed as the character takes damage. There we go. So now when I adjust this player health slider, it will expose more and more of the red as the player takes damage. Here we are. Oh, we're fully healthy. Ouch, 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 ouch. We're taking damage. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Bam, bam, bam. And now we can really see a difference. So not only are we indicating the amount of health the character has by the size of the bar itself, but we're also doing it by the background as well. So we can really see this contrast between the two. All right, guys. So that's really what I wanted to do in this episode as far as building these assets. I think this is getting very long already. I think we're probably around 20 minutes, and I don't like to go past 20 minutes when we're making videos like this. So I'm going to break this up into 2 different episodes. I'm going to adjust the scale a little bit. Let's adjust it in the Y. Let's make it 1.25. That didn't do anything. Oh, it did. And I don't want to adjust the X, but I don't want this thing here to get weird either. 1.25. Let's do that. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it 1.5, actually. 1.5 and 1.5. Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I didn't like the way that looked. And I'm actually going to make the width a little bit less. So instead of 160, I'm going to make the width 100. That looks pretty good. So that's how I'm going to do it. I just want it to be a little bit bigger. I didn't like the size of that. It wasn't very noticeable down here. Sorry, I got totally distracted. Anyway, okay, so this is definitely getting really long now, guys. I'm gonna cut off the video here, and we're gonna talk about the code in the following video. The code to actually adjust this kind of stuff. There's one more thing I want to do. Thinking about it, there's one more thing I want to do. Right now, we've got this entire thing in this player health group. Sorry, player health group right here. We've got the entire thing on there, and right now it's right up against the edge of our actual screen, and I don't like that. I want to give it a little bit of room, both in the X and the Y. So I'm going to move it out in the X position to, let's say, 25. That's a little bit better, and I move up in the Y a little bit too. Let's say to minus 25. No, sorry, 25. 25. That's a little better. That's a little bit more centered and a little bit more obvious to the player. Even choosing the lower left-hand corner, it's kind of iffy. I'm going to leave it there for now. You guys can adjust where you place your health slider. In my case, this is out of the way. It's out of the way, and it's perfectly fine there. If I really wanted to, what I could do is I could adjust this entire thing so it's in the upper left-hand corner, and maybe we'll take a look at doing it like that in later on. We'll see how this looks. In the game that I actually already made, I have it in the lower left-hand corner. I thought, oh, it's unobtrusive there, but it's also a little bit difficult to see. So you want to make sure that any information you are presenting to your players is readily available right there and readily obvious to the players themselves. And the good thing about this group is once I have everything set up the way I like it, I can simply adjust the entire group. And that's really why I did it. Adjusting the entire group, and that gives me my spacing. So I'm going to do all of my other things like that as well. Anyway, guys, that's all I really want to do for this episode. I'm going to file save you so I make sure I don't lose anything. File save. And in the next episode, guys, we'll take a look at writing code that's going to change the health slider. All right? I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. If you did, let me know down below with a thumbs up or a comment. Let me know you're out there watching. Let me know any questions you have. I'm really hoping that you guys are going to be doing games of your own. That's why I'm making these videos. They're not for me. I can make these things already. I know how to do them. I really want you guys to make some awesome, awesome games. I know that my real-life students, their games are looking great. I'm super, super excited about them. We're moving along really well. My 2D students, their games were amazing. I was so excited. Hopefully you guys have already seen those by now. When I'm making these videos, they're still kind of working on them. So that's I don't want to put them up until they've got them exactly the way they like them. But as soon as I do, I'm going to be putting them up. All right, guys. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below. And if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.